Since 1969, Bethel Horizons has been helping people to foster a better understanding of God, self, others, and nature. Over the next few minutes, I want to take you on a journey about the major events that have occurred over the last 50 years of Bethel Horizons history. In the late 1960s, Pastor Bob Borgward convened a camp study committee to help him bring his vision of a church camp for Bethel Lutheran Church to fruition. In 1968, Pastor Borgward called a young Pastor Dwayne Hansen to begin to realize this vision. With Pastor Hansen's hiring, the committee looked for a site that met the following three requirements. 1. Be within an hour of Madison. 2. Have access to water for swimming and boating. 3. Be adjacent to a state park. In late 1968, Pastor Hansen and others took a hayride on this farm located in a valley. The Halverson farm became the first piece of Horizons property. However, because it was in the valley, there were concerns about access and it being too hot in the summer. So, when the Anderson farm came on the market shortly after the Halverson farm, Pastor Dwayne recalls getting a call from Keith Moyer. Keith said, "Stop what you are doing and write out a check for $500 and take it to Les Anderson and let him know that we would like to buy the farm and not to sell until our board could meet." Within the week, the board had met and agreed to purchase both properties. Thus, the Halverson and Anderson farms became the core properties of Bethel Horizons in 1969. It did not take long for programs to follow, as in 1970 the first weekly summer program started for 7th and 8th graders, including a trip on the Kickapoo River, located 90 minutes away. Canoeing on the Kickapoo River remains an important part of our summer program to this day. Then in 1971, it was time to add week-long programs for 8 to 12-year-olds. In this first year, approximately 50% of the campers came as referrals from Dane County Social Services, thus realizing Pastor Dwayne's dream of extending a nature-filled camp experience to inner-city children. Also in 1971, Bethel Horizons invested $5,000, a value of over $30,000 in today's value, into the creation of a master plan. The landmark decision of this plan was to mark a line along the upland ridge to separate the main site area, where a limited amount of additional development could occur, and the wilderness valley, which would remain, quote, forever wild. That landmark decision continues today and will guide development at Bethel Horizons into the future. 1971 was a launch year for a lot of firsts. The congregational picnic began to be held at Bethel Horizons, starting an important tradition for the Bethel Lutheran Church community that continues today. These picnics have provided the congregation an opportunity to be in fellowship in the beautiful surroundings of Bethel Horizons, just an hour's drive away from church in downtown Madison. In 1972, one of the Bethel Horizons signature programs began to emerge with the use of teepees. From 1973 until around 2014, the Teepee Village provided the home base for our 8 to 12-year-old program. Groups of 8 youth and 2 counselors stayed in each teepee and prepared their meals over the fire pit at each site. While the teepees are no longer there, groups still cook a few of their meals over the fire. As camp began to grow, it became clear that volunteer help was needed in order to accomplish all that was envisioned. Thus, in 1975, the Friends of Horizons was created and would go on to do numerous work projects, coordinate the bike-a-thon, organize Lefsa and Christmas sales, Lenten lunches and dinners fundraisers, and much more. After Gary Forbes, the first resident manager of camp, moved away from the area to pursue other endeavors, the board and Pastor Dwayne interviewed this young gentleman, Dan Andrew. Dan was hired just as the Barn Retreat Center was being built and dedicated, thus providing Horizons with its first official retreat center. In addition, the Barn Retreat Center continued the tradition of building fieldstone fireplaces, which were all built by a dedicated volunteer crew led by Bob Forbes. Art through music and other forms had been an important part of Bethel Horizons from the beginning. In 1981, this focus took on new life as the first pottery workshop was held at Bethel Horizons, led by Don Hunt. From 1981, these programs evolved into the 3-week-long experiences of communion with clay that formed the genesis of the Adama Clay Studios program. As Bethel Horizons went into its 16th year of operation, more construction led to the resident manager house and the service building, thus providing space for Dan and Sue to raise their growing family and provide space to store the necessary equipment needed as camp continued to grow. It was also at this time that the board wisely included raising funds to retire the original debt incurred from the purchasing of the 2 original farms. From the beginning, Bethel Horizons was fortunate to have Ruth Hine, a well-known and respected DNR naturalist, leading the environmental education programming efforts. In 1987, the Nature Center fulfilled the vision of Ruth and Pastor Dwayne for a top-notch place for people to have space to learn more about the natural world around them. The environmental education program has continued to grow and on average serves around 3,000 youth and adults each year. As the concept of ropes courses emerged in the 1980s as a proven tool for building teams, John Jackson created the first low ropes course in the valley. In 1992, this program was moved and the current high ropes course was built as the adventure program began to grow and currently serves approximately 3,000 youth and adults each year. The 1971 master plan called for an additional retreat center. In 1993, the ground was broken on the Prairie Center. After initial framing was up, a straight-line windstorm knocked the building down. Undeterred, the building was reconstructed, only to have lightning strike and start a fire in one of the peaks. Fortunately, the fire was caught early so that damage was mitigated, and the building was able to be completed finally in 1999, along with the first bedroom unit. The completion of the Prairie Center 20 years ago marked fulfillment of the majority of development that had been outlined in the 1971 master plan. As the Communion with Clay programs continued to thrive and as Don Hunt prepared to retire from West High School, Pastor Dwayne and Don began dreaming about a bigger role for the Pottery and Arts program. In 2004, Bethel Horizons was able to purchase a 75-acre parcel adjacent to the main camp entrance. Pastor Dwayne and Don spent many mornings in the milkhouse office near the barn on the main site, dreaming about what could be done with this parcel. Don immediately repurposed the old chicken barn into what is now Scotty's studio, and this was put to use right away. In 2009, after having seasonally used Scotty's studio for the first several years, the first major building for the new Adama site was constructed. The Adama studio provided a space where clay workshops could be held year-round. Today, we have clay workshops there, gas kiln rentals, and other types of art workshops in this space throughout the year. As demand for workshops and retreat space at Adama and Bethel Horizons in general grew, the Art Ventures Retreat Center was constructed with a main dining room and 1 bedroom unit, with designs for 3 more bedroom units to be added at a later time. With the addition of this retreat center, we have seen the Adama programs flourish, with the now over 40 scheduled workshops each year, and overflow retreat space from the main site, which accounted for 25% of weekend overnight stays in 2018. As you can see, Bethel Horizons has continued to grow throughout its 50-year history into a camp and retreat center that serves people from all over not only the greater Madison area and Wisconsin, but also the country and internationally. As we look to the next 50 years, we have identified 5 projects with the help of our most recent strategic plan that will help camp continue to meet the ever-changing needs of our guests and increase our capacity.